Let's talk about how to build your essay from the bottom up. And I'm going to use an example from the essay bank that I call Tourné. The first draft of Tourné has two parts. The author is in the Army Culinary School, and he fails his cooking test. Then he passes his cooking test. At first blush, the essay seems pretty good. It's interesting and it's dramatic. The problem is that law schools don't admit people on the basis of their cooking skills. They admit people on the basis of their character. If you think about the essay pyramid, this draft has 2 out of 3. So it's got the events, something happens, the author fails and then passes his test, and it's got the emotions, sad face, face with tears of joy. But there's no lesson. What does the author learn? He passes his cooking test just by trying harder. A really successful obstacle overcome essay cannot just be about some external obstacle like the cooking test. There has to be an internal obstacle as well. That way, the solution encompasses more than getting more skillful. The solution is about becoming more mature or adjusting your attitude. It took us several drafts to discover that this was actually an essay about overconfidence. But once we did, we were able to recast the entire thing to articulate a lesson about humility. So now the beginning isn't just about how hard cooking school is. It's about being overconfident and being unprepared for that challenge. When the author writes about failing the test over here, he's not emphasizing how hard the test itself is. He's really emphasizing how unprepared he was. Again, it's about his internal challenge. He was overconfident. And that means that the key moment is not over here like we thought. It's in here. Let me read to you from the scene. Being bested by a French potato football was a lesson in humility. I realized that it would take hard work to compensate for my evident lack of cooking talent. I began to bring sacks of potatoes back to my hotel room and set up in front of the TV for long sessions of carving. In other words, the author realizes his problem, he adjusts his attitude, and then he takes action. Now this moment of triumph, which we used to think was the key moment, is actually more like an epilogue. The author vanquishes the test because he's already vanquished his inner challenge, his overconfidence. In order to make things tidy, the author restates the lesson in his conclusion. My time in culinary school was both humbling and empowering. On the one hand, it showed me that talent won't always see me through. On the other hand, it showed me that I can make up for my shortcomings with discipline and practice. But this conclusion is baked into the structure of the story. The author had to learn his lesson right here before he could pass the test. We're only restating it in slightly different terms in the conclusion in order to re-emphasize it. Now in this essay, the external stakes were actually significant. If the author failed the test, he might have been kicked out of culinary school. But you can write an essay in which the external stakes are almost non-existent, and only the internal stakes matter. That means that the key moment can be tiny. I've spoken before about an essay built around exactly such a small key moment. The narrator looks at someone in a coffee shop who's being rude to her and just says, "Excuse me, why do you have to be rude?" And even though from the outside it doesn't seem like it mattered, it really mattered to her. Let's review. When you build your essay from the bottom up, you start with an event that's significant to you. Then you add your setup, the before circumstance, which in this case was that the author was overconfident. You fit another event to it to fill out your story, and finally you cap it with a lesson at the end. What did you learn, or how did you change?